right, what's going on? So today we are talking about business logic issues. All right, now I'm gonna try to explain this best as I can. So let's just get into it. But there's a lot of stuff I need you guys to understand here. And again, I'm gonna try to explain it all. A lot of let's just get into it. Hopefully, it'll make sense. So when we talk about business logic issues, what are we talking about? Well, if we go to this demo here, what do we see? We see this like web application that lets us create a node. Okay, so we'll make it test. We'll call it test, and then we are gonna turn intercept on and see what happens. So okay, this allows us to create a node, but the interesting thing is the look what it says. Submit a node and it becomes permanently locked. No edits are allowed. So nodes are final. So what is going on here? What's going on here is a sequence of events. Okay, the first step is we create our node. Second step, we submit it. And when we submit it, what happens if I let this request go? Our node is over here, but we can no longer edit it. Okay, so this is logic specific to this application. This application, it has this kind of security feature. And again, this is particular to this specific application. In other applications, you can create nodes, edit them, whatever. But in this one, once you create the node, you should not be able to edit it further. Okay. So again, what do we have? We have a sequence of events. Okay. Sequence of events. What's the first step? You make the node. Okay. What comes after that? Submit the note. And what's the final step? Well, it's not really an action you take, but the final kind of thing that happens in this flow is node gets locked. All right. So this is what's going on. Now, when we talk about business logic, again, we're usually talking about, well, exactly as it sounds, like logic specific to the business. Right? So with that said, this is logic that you see in this particular application. Just like this logic, there's going to be different business rules and such that different applications want to enforce. Okay. And again, in this case, we're talking about the sequence of events. What was the sequence? Again, we made the node, submit the node, and the node gets locked. But what happens if we do something out of order? Because API calls can be repeated, right? So this is API call that or there's an API call that submits the node in this step number 2, the node gets locked. But since this is an API call here, we can make it, we can make it before, we can make it after, we can make it whenever, because API calls are repeatable. What do I mean when I say API calls are repeatable? Well, plain and simple. When we made the API call to create the node here, we could, now I'm creating another node with this for this example, but this is the API call that creates the node. I'm going to let it go. You see it's created another node. But you see I have this API call, I've sent it to repeater. So I can repeat that as many times as I like. I can send it whenever I want, basically. So I can do things with API calls. Developers are usually going to have like a sequence in which they want you to do things. But because you can send any API call anytime you want, you can do things out of sequence, and that can lead to issues. Now, how does this play out in this example? Well, again, the developers don't want us to edit, but this locked attribute, again, they're just expecting it'll go in the order that locked. When you send a note, this locked attribute will be set to true, and everything will be good. But what happens if I'm going to go ahead and intercept this here. I'm going to delete this. What happens if we send, say, an API call here, and we'll make locked equals to false? Let's try sending it. Oh, hold on, I need a header. Okay, that's interesting. Let's refresh. Look, we can edit this again. So what did we do? We did things out of order. What the developers wanted us to do is they had the locked attribute here. And this is the order in which they wanted that attribute to be used. Okay, you submit it, that's the order it goes in. That's it. They don't want you to touch that locked attribute after that point. But you can use it whenever you want, because again, we can send API calls whenever we want. So hopefully some of that is making sense, at least somewhere, right? But the main point that I want to make here is, these simple bugs do exist. The actual bug that I'm basing this off of, it was very similar to this, where I did something out of order, and then there was basically one API call that would enable something. And then by looking through the JavaScript and such things, I was able to find another API call that would disable it. Okay. And that API call, again, the developers probably weren't even expecting me to find it, but that API call does something out of order, right? And that, making this locked thing false, it probably has some use somewhere in some order. But the developers weren't expecting me to use it in this order, where it was like I made lock true, and then now I've gone ahead and made it false. So hopefully some of that is making sense somewhere. But the main point I want to get across with my videos, because this is not a very difficult bug, and I think a lot of people will be familiar with it. But still, people will be like, how do I do bug bounty, whatever. It's like, these kind of bugs exist. If you understand bugs like these, you can start. I'm not saying you're going to be top of the world or something. Like, I don't know how good you'll be, not be, etc. But these type of bugs exist. So there's no like people always ask, what should I know before I get started and stuff. Like, there's no right answer. I don't fucking know, because you can know the just absolute basic stuff and still find bugs, or you can know the most complex stuff and not find bugs. Bug bounty by itself is kind of its own thing you have to learn. It has its own quirks and ups and downs and kind of knowledge associated with it. So how do you get that knowledge? It's the same way that this is going to be a bit of a rant, but I'm really hoping, I'm saying this to help you. I really am. So I'm hoping it'll make sense, and I'm hoping you will actually take this advice. But bug bounty, right, again, is a knowledge in and of itself. Now, how do you get proficient at it? You just keep hunting. It really is that simple. You keep hunting every single day. You ideally focus on one target. At least that's my hunting style, right? You focus on one target, and then day in, day out, you're hunting every day. I'm not saying put in 8-hour days, 10-hour days, do 1 hour a day, 2 hour a day. That's fine. But with proper focus on a single target and learn the ins and outs of that target. When you, again, and by the way, this feature, when I found it in the application, it wasn't something super obvious. It was going deep and deep into the application. And then there was this one feature that it was something like this, where once you do it, you shouldn't be able to undo it. And I was able to undo it. But it took me a long time. If you just gave me that API call the first day I looked at the application, I'll be like, what the fuck is even this? But when you, again, stick with a target, 1 week, 2 week, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year. I've been on targets for over a year. This, you guys need to understand these things. So that's the real hard work. That's the real knowledge gap, so to speak. Is that people, when they're like, I don't know how to apply the knowledge, it's there's no guide on how to apply the knowledge, because every web application looks not completely different, of course, but relatively different. So you're gonna need to understand the ins and outs to see understand the business logic and such, and then see what's actually going to be a threat to this particular target. But also, bugs on the surface level are, of course, usually going to be picked up, whether it's by AI, whether it's by other hunters before you. Everyone explores the surface level. So when I say there's opportunity in bug bounty, there's money to be made in bug bounty, I don't think that that's at the surface level. But again, Stick with a target. Spend months and months and months and months on that target. Even if you, like, again, I've said this many times too. Some of you come to me with questions. I want to, if you show me you've been hunting for like 2-3 months with proper focus, you have some notes and you can show me, you've been hunting on a target and you still haven't found any bugs, like not even a lead to a bug, then we can talk and I can, try to help you out, see what's going on, what's the situation. But a lot of you are asking questions which you don't need the answer to right now. Like there's no, like, how do I find a bug? I don't fucking know. You think I have like some step-by-step guide on how to find bugs, bro? Like I don't. I wish I did. I'd make a lot of money. So you have to just, like, every time I start, I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna find a bug today. Like we all have, everyone is going through the same thought process. Everyone is going through the same everything. You need to actually do it. Okay, learn from the port speaker, learn from my videos, and then the main learning, like 80 to 90 to like 95% of the learning is gonna come from doing it. Pick an application, start reading the documentation. Don't worry about whether you have the perfect knowledge or you know enough, you don't know enough. Just start thinking about, okay, this is what are some attack vectors. Start looking at shit like this. Maybe they have some feature again that's like that has a restriction. Okay, you can't edit this. Okay, well, am I able to edit it? Can I find some API code that allow me to edit it? Can I just I don't know, maybe it's only client-side validation, which we talked about in a previous, well, this technically is also a case of missing server-side validation as well. But point to make, okay, does the app have IDs? Okay, what happens if I swap those IDs? Is there IDOR here? Like, these are the things you have to try. And I'm telling you, like, I find IDORs on a monthly basis at least. I still, like, one of the most basic bugs out there, I find it. And I know I'm not the only one. Like, these basic bugs exist, but then it's like where to look for the IDOR. It's not like you open the apps and like the first 10 API calls. Bro, like, do you know how many API I've tested on some of my targets? Like, I have a spreadsheet of over like 2,000 API calls. Like, you guys don't understand this shit. Like, this is, bro, that's all I have to say. Like, please, I'm genuinely, I don't know how much of this was helpful or made sense, but I'm genuinely saying this out of care for you. If you want to, again, this is just my style. If you want to follow some other style, that's fine. Of course, I can't guide someone on a different style. But if you want to do bug bounty, you want to get started, this is genuinely the advice I have for you. Understand these things, of course, understand, have some kind of tools in your arsenal, so understand some bugs. But if you even understand some of the basic ones like IDOR, business logic issues, client-side validation, then just apply yourself. You're gonna learn so much just from applying yourself. You're gonna, when you're sitting in burp and you don't understand, what this header means. Like, dude, burp is a major pain in the ass. I hated burp when I first started using it. So it's, again, sticking with that for 2-3 months. After you get to 2-3 months, it'll be like, you'll see, okay, this header content type, okay, applicable, like, it'll just be like, you won't even have to think about it. Like, now I live in burp, more or less. Like, this is what I'm saying. But you guys are, the main hurdle, like, right hand to God, the main hurdle I think a lot of you have is it's gonna sound, I think, like, I don't know if it'll make sense, but like, the main hurdle a lot of you truly have is purely mental. And that hurdle is when you get, like, when you're sitting, like, I'm about to hunt right now, when you're sitting in front of your computer, you're like, oh, I don't know what the fuck to do. And it's like, bro, same, nobody does. Like, I have a rough methodology that I built after like 1.5 years of doing this shit. I was like, okay, now I remember this thing worked before this. And let me go into another fucking rant. This is what I'm trying to also explain, and hopefully it'll make sense. Okay. When you, like, say you watch my video, you learn about IDORs. Okay, cool. Now you understand IDORs. Okay, say then you're reading some, like, fucking blog or whatever, and it shows you some, way someone found API calls. Okay, for a target. Okay, cool. Then say you're hacking, like, on a specific target, so you stick with that target for, again, 2-3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Now you have some business logic specific understanding, okay, of this particular target. what's going to happen is, again, every single day you're going to be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't even know if this is right. That's completely normal. What's going to happen is, again, you're going to keep trying, you're going to keep applying yourself. Eventually you'll find a bug. Let's say you find your first IDOR. Okay, whoop-de-doo, you found your IDOR. Now, the way you would have found that IDOR maybe is, okay, this way that you read in, some blog article way back in the day that show you how to find API calls. Like, okay, you realize that, okay, when I applied this technique to find API calls, I can find potentially API calls with IDs. And then, I get IDORs. And then you're going to have, again, you're focusing on one target, you're going to have some business logic specific understanding. Okay, so maybe from that, you're able to uncover some more attack surface. And then as you keep doing that, you're going to kind of start to find out what works better than other things. Like, let's add a few more techniques in here. I'm too lazy to think of them, so let's just call this technique A and technique B. Okay. So again, as you're doing your hunting on this one specific target, you'll notice that, okay, technique B wasn't, didn't really get me much bugs, but okay, technique A, that, is good. I found it useful. It helped me get bugs. So then you put that in your arsenal. Then this way that you found from some article on how to make API calls, okay, you put that in your arsenal. Then obviously the business logic, understanding, reading the docs, etc., etc. Okay, and then IDOR, say you're finding IDOR, you put that in. I'm literally describing more or less how I found my methodology right now. Then again, we're talking like this clicked for me like a year and a half in, son. Like, and then it'll click for you, okay, like when I'm approaching a brand new target, okay, this technique A, this was like relatively quick to do, pretty useful, okay, let's start with that. Okay, and then this technique B, okay, then I'm going to do that. And then I remember this worked last time, okay, then I'm going to, do you see what I'm trying to say? But some of you want all these questions answered when you start. It doesn't work like that. And the second thing is, as you do this, again, everyone thinks uniquely, everyone has different things that they enjoy. This becomes your methodology. That's not to say you're not going to dupe anymore. Of course, you still will. But there will be unique parts to this methodology which will lead to unique findings for you. Which, of course, is great because less competition in that specific niche. If you go down, I'm definitely niched. You don't have to be niched, to succeed. I'm not saying that. There's people who are generalists who are very successful. But I'm just explaining one way in which this is possible and how it all comes together. So hopefully some of that made sense somewhere, man. Like, right hand to God, I'm trying to help you guys out, and I try to share the most important stuff. And the most important thing is, once you have the basics down, you're going to learn by doing, period. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care. I'm not trying to argue with anyone on this because everyone's minds works differently or whatever. But I can only speak from first-hand experience. You need to fucking apply yourself. If you're not hunting 1 to 2 hours a day, I don't even want to hear a motherfucking question. Because that's the first problem that needs addressing. And that's it. So again, hopefully, that helped you out. And that rant, hopefully it was helpful. That's all I can say. And hope all these concepts help you get paid.